We'll have a perspective from Abuja, but is there a legal perspective to this? We'll find out. Mark.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us in the studio Professor Tahir Maman, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria and also the Vice Chancellor of Bayes University. Prof, you're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now, you have heard our guest in the studio in Lagos. He thinks that, INEC should be unbundled as part of the solution to, the problem that INEC faced on Saturday. I know that a lot of Nigerians were disappointed. Perhaps you were as well. Did you expect the postponement of the polls?
Certainly not. Certainly not.
It came as a surprise to you?
Oh, yes, because this is a very huge responsibility. And so INEC had given assurances for the last 2 or 3 years of their preparedness and readiness to conduct the elections. So the postponement came really, and then looking at the timing, without going over the issues again, we've talked about it so much. So it's a very huge shock to everybody. However, there is an angle to it which we haven't talked much about.
Just before we go quickly to the angle, I want to ask, were you satisfied with the responses that INEC gave in the briefing, which they gave on the back of the postponement of the polls? Did their answers satisfy your questions as to why the polls had to be postponed?
On the surface, sounded persuasive, but reflecting more, I think there are deeper problems associated with the postponement and the explanations given by INEC.
Now, to the angle you're going to look at, is it related to the reasons given by INEC for the postponement?
Well, the angle is actually a legal angle.
Okay.
Yeah, we all assumed INEC has the legal cover for what they did. And so we're not talking about it, but actually it doesn't have. It's just that for now, it is convenient for us to simply move on and face what is before us. But truly, if you look at the Electoral Act, the lawmakers never envisaged a wholesale cancellation of the entire elections, because it only talks about security, disasters, and emergencies, emergencies, which must be cogent and verifiable. Now, if problems arose in a state, Anambra, and 2 other local governments in the country, that cannot be said to be problems of a cogent and verifiable, to the extent that you can really postpone elections for the whole country. And it says in an area or some areas of the country. So if the lawmakers wanted or envisaged that there could be postponed elections in the entire country, they would have clearly made provision for it.
So you see a legal direction to the... But if you listen to INEC's explanation, they were talking about... Some people might say that maybe if it was a governorship election, for instance, perhaps it could be another kettle of fish in the sense that, each constituency is separate. But for the presidency, they say they're running the elections and running Nigeria as one constituency for that presidency elections. Don't you think it could have implications to the fairness of the polls if INEC had, gone on with the polls, irrespective of the fact that some areas had not been able to get polling materials and there could be problems as a result?
No. That's not a very major explanation, because even in determining who is the winner at the polls, the law doesn't require that everybody must win in all the polls, in all the units. It says substantial compliance. That's even what the law requires, substantial compliance. And then simple majority of the polls, and then 2/3 majority across the states. So if you have one state, that can clearly fall outside that 1/3, which a winner doesn't have to have. So that's not an issue. So the point I'm trying to add to that is that it clearly requires a second look at the Electoral Act to make provision that either to prohibit INEC from wholesale postponement of national elections, or where it has to be done, then a certain body must be consulted. And for me, the body that can come to mind readily, where there can be very little or no political considerations, is the Council of State. So if INEC has to postpone or cancel elections in the entire country, the Council of State should be consulted on it, however late it is. I can understand there are problems in consulting political parties and difficulty in generating consensus.
I think somebody already came up with that suggestion. I can't quite remember who now, saying that INEC should brief, or the Council of State should be reconvened, or is it the National? Yeah, I think it's the Council of State should be briefed on this. We recall that in 2015, when the polls are going to be shifted, the Council of State waded in because there was a big controversy as to why the polls had to be shifted.
But it shouldn't come after the event.
It shouldn't come after the. It should come before.
No. It should be before. It should be to help INEC really consider the situation at hand, whether there are other solutions to the problem rather than simply throwing the entire country into disarray.
Now, you have heard, I mean, some people have started coming up with suggestions so that we can avoid situations like the situations where INEC will have to cancel the polls. Some people are suggesting that because of the logistics problem, perhaps INEC should be unbundled. That's one of the suggestions that our guest is given in Lagos. Do you agree with him?
I have a lot of reservations with that. Certainly, INEC is taking so much responsibility at the moment, and I think I had the occasion to say that it's being given jobs which really shouldn't be its own. For instance, if you look at voters' education, that shouldn't be INEC's responsibility.
Whose job should it be?
Oh, so many agencies. There you have the orientation, National Orientation Commission agencies is there, and then it is primarily really the job of political parties to bring out their voters, to bring out their supporters, enlighten them on the programs of the party and the necessity for them to come out and vote for the party. So
but knowing how to vote is another question.
Yeah, that's why I said voters' information. I mean, this is really, INEC can handle that, as we've been seeing, like the program I watched yesterday day before yesterday on channels on the processes for voting. It was fantastic. That kind of thing is good, but not voters' education. This is completely different. That's the job of political parties entirely. And the National Orientation Agency and so many a number of other agencies. So, but why I have problem, where I sense danger in the kind of thing we are talking about unbundling INEC is, see what is happening with state electoral commissions. There are more or less departments in governors' offices across states. I don't know of any state where the state electoral commissions have any autonomy whatsoever. And that's why in everywhere, when elections are run by state electoral bodies, it's the state that wins the entire, wins completely.
Do you think that we should have, should we have another, I mean, even if INEC is going to be unbundled, maybe not in terms of unbundling them into states, perhaps in terms of the tasks that they do, in terms of directorates, for instance, maybe those who handle logistics, maybe those who, maybe they should have different DGs handling different things. And, maybe the INEC is actually, burdened with the actual electoral day itself, the election day. Wouldn't that work?
No, we will be saddled with infighting, interagency infighting. And honestly, since this postponement, and for the last 2 or 3 days, the social media have been awash with so many other considerations which could have led to the postponement, besides what INEC said. And
are you want to believe them?
I'm tended to consider some of them, certainly. And I believe when Mr. President said after the elections, there is going to be some inquisition of a sort. I think that's the right course, that's the right step to take.
Do you think that it ought to be a legal, an illegal provision to ensure that INEC, if INEC needs to, postpone elections, for instance, INEC must comply with those legal provisions before they can unilaterally just move the polls?
Well, at the moment, those provisions are there. The section 36 we talked about really are very clear, and we don't want to...
Because, the initial term you used was cancellation. Some people would say the polls weren't cancelled, they were postponed.
They were postponed,
and those are two different things, aren't they?
Yeah, cancellation means something has taken place and you now...
Exactly, you cancel
abort it, sort of.
Exactly. So are there provisions for postponement? There are provisions for cancellation, but not postponement.
Oh, there's provisions for postponement. That's why that section 26 of the Electoral Act is there. you know, but for in specific circumstances, which is where there is a security concern and disasters, and then some emergencies in some areas that can be established, physically established, is what the law says. So to me, that is actually sufficient, except the gap which I mentioned earlier on, that if it is cancelling or postponing the entire elections, then there should be more consultations with a political agency, you know, that people can have some confidence in, like the Council of State that I mentioned. Are
you confident that come Saturday, the polls will be conducted in a very credible and transparent manner?
Well, I want to be.
But are the indications on ground giving you that confidence?
Yes, I have my worries, to be honest, because, as I said, we need to understand the context within which we operate, which is the attitude of our politicians, because we are focusing so much on INEC, but INEC is just one player in the political system. And the political parties, the political actors, actually they play a larger role, because a lot of the problems which INEC is grappling with at the moment actually emanate from even the primaries of the parties, which were extremely acrimonious, and which is why INEC is started with 644.
So if I get your worry right, cases. It is about not about INEC precisely, it's about the political parties.
It's the environment.
Okay.
We are running our affairs.
Well,
the attitude of political actors, their statement, what they say.
There's very little. Well, I know that INEC, we're expecting INEC, a representative of INEC in the studio very shortly, and we'll ask them about the environment, you know, and how they intend to conduct elections. But we have to thank you most kindly for coming on Sunrise Daily, Professor. Professor Tahir Mamman is a senior advocate of Nigeria and the Vice Chancellor of Bayes University, and he's been speaking with us in our studios in Abuja.